Great. All right. Good morning, CMI. Welcome to the first Brass Masterclass here for this week. A few items of business before we get started. This morning, I just want to make sure you all remember to stay muted as you are, unless you have a question. If you have a question, which Chris very much welcomes, and we hope you will, we can do that one of two ways. You can either write the question in the chat with Chris Ward, and I will be monitoring. Chris Ward is your co-host. Or you can raise your hand, do the raise your hand symbol. I'm sure you all know how to do that, and then we'll give you a shout out. So that's how that's going to work. I just want to mention this is also being recorded and will be posted later. So please just, remember who you are and who you represent and why we are here. And we just want to keep everything kind and appropriate, both in our speaking and in the chat. So just keep that in mind, please. So with us today, we have Chris Jaudes, who started much like the rest of us. At 14, he told me he started coming to CMI. I sent you his bio yesterday in your email, so you should have seen it, and you can read all about the amazing accomplishments he has had throughout his career. But probably maybe just a couple highlights are that Chris currently teaches at Juilliard. If you don't know what that school is, you should probably look that up instantly. And he also played on Broadway for many years and has recorded throughout the world on many different recordings. If you want more on his specific bio, please just take a look at that. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
We're so happy to have you here at CMI. Maybe while people are kind of warming up, could you regale us with a story of CMI or tell us maybe about your experience there?
Story of CMI. Well, there's a number of them. Most of them are that my cabin was always in trouble for not being clean. And,
was that your fault?
Not solely my fault. It seems like we all had some. I mean, I was young. I was trying to behave. Later on, you get older and you maybe take the rules a little bit less importantly. But no, it was actually Greg Payton. So I'd like to blame Greg for that one. I hope he's watching. But I had a wonderful experience, and I got to say I was inspired by some of the most, to me, astounding playing I ever heard up to that point. And I was really so impressed, almost to the point of being disappointed in where I was as a player, which kind of helped me realize I needed to practice harder.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Tom Hanton says he may or may not have been in that cabin.
It's possible. Yeah, I can't remember everybody who was actually in the cabin because we hung with a lot of people, but it was certainly a pretty dirty cabin. Frankly, I was younger and a lot of the cats were older. When you're young, I was 14 when I started, so you're pretty good about cleaning up, I think, and following the rules at 14. It wasn't until a little bit later than that I ended up kind of being the leader of the messy room and all of that stuff. But could have been Tom who got us all in trouble. That could be it.
That's funny. So does anybody have any questions? I think I may have mentioned this early on, but in case anybody is new, we really just want to give you the most opportunity to get as much out of this as you can. I mean, Chris knows so much about playing, and he's obviously an expert in what he does and has a lot of experience in really all of the styles. So if you have any specific questions, it can really be about anything. Please ask those. So I'm just going to open this up for a few seconds. Does anybody have any questions for Chris? Awesome. Chris, it looks like you and I are having a chat today and everyone's just going to listen in.
Everybody knows everything already, maybe.
Apparently, yeah, that's awesome. Maybe we can learn from them. So let me just start to kind of keep on the CMI theme. So what inspired you early on? I know you mentioned already that, you know, just hearing people who kind of just left you in awe of what they're playing, but can you speak specifically more to what that is?
Yeah. So first of all, I went to the biggest corps in St. Louis, which you know, had a pretty good band. You know, it was not fantastic. Well, I shouldn't say it wasn't fantastic. It was not the best band in the world, but good. It you know, and I was kind of feeling pretty good about myself when I got there, because I thought, okay, well, my problem is I was the end chair cornet player of that band. And when I say end chair, I mean the very last one, the second cornet player. Peggy was the other end chair, of course. So we were like the bookends of that section. I'm sure, unfortunately, I wasn't much help. Anyway, so I got there, everybody was pretty much better than me. And it's very possible I got in because they thought I would know better, because I came from that corps, which was the big music corps. Anyway, the most important thing to me, aside from the sheer size of the camp, which was much larger than what I was used to, was the fact that the staff band was there. Some of the faculty were staff band players. And I'd never really heard anything live like that. You know, I went to a few things, but to be honest with you, when you were my age, you skipped out on what was going on in the room, and everybody was hanging and talking out in the lobby. This is really the first time I heard some amazing concert work, you know. And I know that Peggy is not involved anymore in terms of the territorial music stuff, but Peggy was my hero. You know, she went to that corps. Like I said, she was the other end chair cornet player. And so watching her play and being involved there, and seeing some of these people teaching who were from the staff band was the most amazing thing to me. That's just music I never heard at that level. I will also say at that point, I hadn't started studying. I ended up, when I went back to St. Louis, studying with Susan Slaughter, who was the principal trumpet in the St. Louis Symphony at the time. And that was a whole nother level of stuff, but I still had not had that experience. So it was, this was really remarkable for me. And I had a blast. It was great fun.
Thank you. Looks like we actually got a question here, Chris, in the chat. At what age did you really know that you had grasped musically what was the best basics you could have at the time? And who inspired you to build from there?
First of all, I'm not sure I've grasped it all yet, to be honest with you. So I won't even tell you what age that is. I had a lot of inspiration, tons. My parents, who were good Army folk, both of them musicians, enjoyed that. A lot of people in my corps. Again, like I talked about, everybody looked up to Peggy. She was the you know, end chair cornet player, and she was the person that we all aspired to play like, without, most of us tried to do it without practicing at that point. But eventually we learned the secret was to actually practice all of this stuff. You know, we didn't get a lot of, well, I mean, eventually the people that I ended up knowing in the St. Louis Symphony, once I started playing, studying with Susan, you know, I mean, it took a while for her to start using me as a sub in the orchestra. And then, but I would go to the concerts and just and sit and watch rehearsals. All of that was incredibly inspiring to me. But in the Army, it was literally the staff band. Those cats were people I looked up to and couldn't believe the level of playing they were achieving, because nobody in St. Louis was achieving that level except for Peggy. I guess that's the answer to the question. I mean, you know, there weren't the same kind of electronic music. You couldn't hear people from all over the world. You know, you had to buy a record and it had to get shipped to you, and you know, so unfortunately, that was, I shouldn't say unfortunately, that was the primary thing for me at that time in my life.
Yeah, that's cool. Um, well, I'm just going to keep asking because I'm looking. Oh, wait, here we go. A more general question about playing. I would like to know how to train the diaphragm muscle support. Specific exercises, any routines for that?
Okay, that's a good question. So basically, you can breathe more. I'm a natural kind of person in the sense that there are plenty of exercises you can do. You can do sit-ups to improve some of those muscles. There are certainly muscles you can use, but I'll be honest with you. I learned a long time ago that the idea is to open things so you can do. Most of us tend to slouch when we play. We tend to hunch over when we look at the music, and you can't see me now slouching, but the idea is now you saw me go from here to here. Now I'm sitting up, and now the apparatus can all do what it's supposed to do. We're all experts on breathing. You know, we were all able to breathe at the age of 1 minute. So from that time, we've been breathing our whole lives. And so there's nobody who has more. In terms of training, I will say that I like the concept of learning how to use it as you play, and just tell you that it's a concept of adding muscle to the blow as you're playing, as you go higher, and less muscle as you play lower. But you're all experts. Every single person who's at this camp right now, and whoever's listening to this, I realize that when I talk camp, I mean in my iPad. So everybody who's there, you all know how to breathe. You're experts already. But I think the thing that people forget about is sitting up. That's really number one, making sure your chest is open enough. And I do want to just mention one book here. I don't think too many people are going to read this book, but Trumpet Pedagogy book, which is written by David Hickman, has every kind of book you can possibly imagine in terms of checking out this information. It's a fantastic book, like that thick, and it's heavy to carry around, but it has all of the information, or not all the information, it shows you where to find all of the information, what kind of books you can look at, and what kind of things you can check out in terms of music to help you do it. One last thing I'll tell you is that just for right now, the purpose is right now, sorry, I won't blast really loud into the thing, but make sure you're sitting up straight. Make sure you get a good breath. And try to hang on to that note, try to get the best possible sound. And once you can do that, try to just learn how to use the air from the diaphragm. You clench the muscles that are in there, and the corners and the tongue, all of those things are part of the whole process. It's a long trail of things that have to happen that start in your diaphragm. And by the way, your diaphragm only breathes in. That's all it does. It doesn't do any blowing into the trumpet or cornet for you. So you take your breath, sit up, take your breath. After that, it's the muscles in your body that blow the air out. And you can speed it up along the way with what you're doing on the inside of your mouth by raising your tongue. Okay. Sorry.
Great.
I hope that I'm trying to be brief if I can.
No, that was great. It was a great answer. Thanks for that, Chris. We got a couple more questions here. So thanks everyone for continuing to chime in. These are great. Okay. Hi. How do I get rid of the fear of mistakes during rehearsals with the band? Because most of them are better than me, and making mistakes makes me feel uncomfortable.
Okay, well, that's a good question, because that was me. I was frightened. Like I said, I was at CMI when I was 14. Most everybody was older than me, and they all sounded, to me, they all sounded like the greatest players in the world. And I will say that it is really easy to listen to that and think, I don't have that. The most important thing is to know where you are and identify where that is. So the idea is, if you have an understanding of where you are as a player, wherever that is, and know what your weaknesses are. That's the thing. We don't like to admit our weaknesses. I used to only practice the stuff I could play really good. I shouldn't call it practicing, because I knew those things. I didn't want to practice stuff I didn't know. I'd throw the music away, go, come on, you know, that's a bad piece of music or whatever, right? It couldn't possibly be my fault. So the secret is know what your weaknesses are and improve them. That doesn't mean you have to stop playing other fun music. You can still play for fun and play all the stuff that you like and do all of that. But the secret is to identify what you're doing. If you don't have a teacher, you should get one. And I mean, I don't care what age you are. You know, I learned stuff from, I'm lucky, really fortunate to play with the greatest players in the world. And I got to tell you, I learned stuff from them all the time. It's remarkable what you'd think, oh my gosh, I'm 60 years old and I honestly never heard of that or didn't understand that I was doing something wrong. So get the information, put it into practice and practice specifically on it. If you've got one note that doesn't work, why are you practicing the other notes? Practice that one. So the idea is find where your weakness is and where it shows up and spend time there. Also, read books by superstars who've written some really great books on how to play the trumpet. And I'm sure that you can get them through the territory, or at least suggestions about who to check with. And you also have some spectacular players that are there for your ability to be able to talk to and say, can you tell me who I could get a lesson from? Maybe you can't get a lesson from the person you want to yet, but get hooked up with a teacher who knows what they're doing. And wait, that sounds like some people don't. I don't mean that in a bad way, but find somebody that you want to sound like and hook up with them and say, here's what I can't do, and admit it. That's the one thing I didn't do for a long time. I would try to hide what I couldn't do. And I'll never forget the Charlie, and those of you who know the Charlier study number 2, my first note was always, because I always knew I was going to miss that. I knew I was going to miss it because I hadn't fixed how to make it happen. Well, guess what? If you saw it on a concert, you would miss it there too until you fix it in your practice room. If you can find a teacher, I think, get some regular education. I know many Army people can see people at the Corps. That's really good. But try to move up to, you know, hearing other people and listening to other people. Okay, sorry, that was a long one.
No, I think that was great. And if I could just piggyback on top of, you know, something that you said in terms of, you know, continuing to learn. And obviously my level of experience is much less than Chris's, but I would just say that what's really come out of this quarantine and everything that people are dealing with is there are so many more additional online resources. I'm learning from people all the time, even just on Facebook, like people who I'm Facebook friends with, they'll be putting like 100 days of practice. You know, I think of like Rex Richardson's things. I'm sure you've seen these as well, Chris. But like he put a couple of really cool flexibility things and third finger exercises that I've kind of worked into my own practice sessions, which I just think is great. There are so many resources out there. Certainly books are great and lessons are fantastic. But I don't know, you know, we have people here from all over the world, and I don't know what your situations are. So you can even always just do stuff online. So there, I'll just throw that out there as well. All right, we have 2 more questions here. I'm going to actually put these 2 together, Chris, because I think they're helpful. One says, tell us about your rehearsal technique. And the other says, hi, I know this is an absurd question, but how much do you think there is to practice during the week? I think you see where I'm going with that, to put those together.
What was the end of how much do you think there is to practice?
How much do you think there is to practice during the week, and what are your rehearsal techniques? So how do you practice?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'll tell you the nice thing. I shouldn't say there's a nice thing about COVID, but the nice thing to have this amount of time is I'm practicing 4 hours every day because I want to. If I could practice 4 hours a day, I would, but I can't. I don't really have the time for that, except for now. And I'm having a blast because I'm finding things that are improving and things that I can change in my playing or work and experiment a little bit. So I think that's really great. I've forgotten the question already, Beth. Can you tell me?
No, it's okay. So how much do you think you should practice, and how do you do it? Like, what's the practical application of what your rehearsal is?
Well, it's almost impossible to tell me how much you should practice without knowing where you are. So I just mentioned I'm practicing 4 hours a day right now, which is okay for me because I play a lot. If you aren't used to doing that, then you can't go that far. My suggestion would be if you start with a half an hour, but really concentrate that half hour on the kind of things you want to improve. Most of us want to go right to the exercises that we like to play and show off our technique and things like that. It's really a good idea to practice some scales, practice some long tones, and I know nobody likes to do them. Trust me, I don't either, but I do them still to this day, every day. And everybody else I know, I told you I get to hang out with great players. It's the same for everybody. All those people that got fantastic and are wonderful players, they got there because they played long tones, they practiced their scales, and they put in the time. You need to start with, if you're starting, half an hour. That's the minimum amount of time I think you can spend. And when you can cover the stuff that you need to, long tone scales, all right, I'd start with that. Maybe some simple melodies. They're good to practice stuff out of. Our tune book is great, but there's plenty of books you can practice out that have simple melodies, simple songs. Use those and then gradually add on to it. And the goal should be, I look forward to practicing. I might like practicing more than I like performing, only because I get to fix things and work, kind of work things. So one last thing is, practice-wise, find a teacher. I'm sure that, I wouldn't be able to really necessarily recommend somebody where you are, wherever you all are out there, but I'm guessing you can. I'm giving Beth more to do. Maybe get in touch there and get some recommendations. I think she's a great teacher. I don't have any idea how much time she has, but maybe she can arrange to have you work with somebody who would be a great instructor. Okay, sorry. I think that's the best I can do within that short of time.
No, I think that was great. We have another question here, but actually before I get to it, I just kind of want to have you expand on a few of things that you said there. So, and this will just be kind of, I'm formulating this question. So you mentioned, long tones and scales and things. Is that something that you would put into your warm-up, Chris, or is that something you just make sure you hit each time you pull your instrument out? I guess I'm just looking for how are you spending your 4 hours a day right now?
Yeah, so I would start with what the equivalent of long tones. So I do the James Stamp study every day. I don't know how many of you know what that is, but the James Stamp warm-up, which is basically these notes. And you rest in those. But what he's done is find a way to keep you from going, which we want to avoid when we're playing long tones. So he does. Which will help you get in the habit of not drooping off the end of your note each time. And that helps develop some control here. And it's the way we play music. We don't droop unless we're playing jazz, and jazz players droop all the time. They droop just getting to the gig. They're anyway. So I start with that every day. I do some technical studies similar to the Clark studies. I've kind of changed some Clark studies for me to do them. So this can be. You can just change the scale that you're playing basically on that all the time, which is really great for your head. A lot of jazz players like to do that because it's teaching you technique that you might use in jazz rather than what you would use perhaps in more classical music. Was there another question I was supposed to ask?
Just kind of how you spend your 4 hours. So obviously yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I have a routine that takes about 45 minutes.
And that's every day?
Every day, yeah.
No matter, even if you have a gig that night.
Doesn't matter. That 45 minutes always happens.
Yep.
So I do that 45 minutes, starting with stamp, some technical studies, some lip flexibilities, some range studies, and then I like to play some etudes as part of the warm up, just to get used to a flow of music. and I have a number of books that I like to just pull out and play through some tunes. Sometimes I just make them up. Believe it or not, if you get around to working on it, you can create some absolutely wonderful melodies and kind of expound on that melody as you're playing through there. But remember to do this. Practice your liabilities, not your strengths. Okay, who said that? Do you know that, Beth? That's a quote from somebody.
It is. I've heard it a million times, but I don't actually know where
Yeah,
it originated.
it could be Bud Herseth or somebody from the Chicago Symphony, I think, probably. But I love that idea, and it never occurred to me. We like to hear ourselves play good, you know, of course. Nobody likes to hear themselves make mistakes. But the idea is we got to practice on what we don't know. So I'd make a list, and believe me, it helps to make this list. Here are your strengths. Here are your liabilities, the things that you think you need work on. It might be a good idea to do the initial warm-up with a strength. In other words, some long tones, making sure you're concentrating on how your chops are working and how the air is moving and what your tongue's doing on it. There's lots of stuff, physical stuff to be thinking about. How many of you think about your tongue when you're playing long tones? You should be. How many of you are thinking about your corners and these muscles up here? You know, all the muscles from way up here all the way down, and these guys down here. It's not just muscles right here or just the corners. So there's plenty of stuff to work on a regular basis there. And so that's my warm up, is dealing with that kind of stuff. I'll gradually move into some scales and gradually expand the range a little bit, but not too much. To be honest with you, I don't practice high notes all that often. That's basically what I have to play most of the time. So I don't spend a lot of time practicing them. I play the scale that I played a little while ago from low C to double high C. I probably do that 20 times a day just to make sure that everything's working the way it's supposed to work. That's my full range. I mean, that's the range that I'm comfortable playing in all the time. So I don't expect you to do that. Please don't pick up your horns and start practicing that scale. You'll hurt yourself. I would have hurt myself, you know, at some point as well. So the idea is find your practical range. If your highest note is an A above the staff, try to play a half step above that when you get to it. And when that happens, great, go a half step above that. It's not half steps all the way, because you begin to learn how to use your muscles better. You learn how to make the airspeed work, and you develop with that, okay? So after I finish doing some range studies, I do some technical studies, and most of them I make up. I just decide I'm gonna play these scales, and I'm gonna play them like this. I do read out of some amazing books. I still like the books I grew up with. I have a book by, oh man, you know what? I can't even remember who wrote this book, and it's a photocopy. This one's a photocopy. Does this look familiar to you? Does any of that look? It's German or Dutch.
Oh.
But it's a great. Let me see if I have anything else in here. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I don't think I'm familiar with whatever that one is, Chris.
I wish I had photocopied the actual composer's name. If I ever get it, I'll send it to Beth, and you can all call her every day to find out what it is, okay? But anyway, so technical studies on stuff, and please, again, practice a few things that you know. That's okay. Kind of feel like I'm getting warmed up by playing this cornet solo that I know or this trumpet solo, and then start practicing on things you don't know, because you can't get better without moving forward. You can learn that one solo. I know some cornet players who had this amazing solo they could play. They played the same solo all the time, everywhere. So the idea is to try to develop and move on from that. So technical studies, and then sometimes just fooling around. Well, I practice jazz stuff, so I'll put on recordings and play with other, like a rhythm section that I can play. Okay, sorry, that's it.
That's awesome. We have a question kind of, you were just leading into it, which is great. I'm going to read it to you the way it's written, and then I think you'll get what they're saying out of here. While mutating from one genre of music to another, what is your advice to tackle a genre outside of my zone of comfort? And please, techniques to do improvisation. Is it all just above scale domination? About Okay, so basically they're saying, how do I learn how to play jazz and improv? And is improv all just about scale domination?
Okay, it's a lot about scales, only because it's about, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of, somehow it seems like a lot of tenor players do this, but trumpet players do this too. And I love this. This is my imitation. Over and over again. And you know why tenor players do that? Because it's easy to do on the tenor. You just put all the things down, right? So for us, it's a little bit more difficult than that because we have just these 3 fingers and we have to keep going back and forth. So first of all, listen to great jazz trumpet players. And I have some good friends who are them, who are those guys, who are just crazy amazing. I would try to steer clear of the new breed of young, aggressive guy who shows a lot of technique, because I think it helps you to be more melodic right from the very beginning. Really think about improvising a melody. And again, after a while, you can begin to start using some passing tones, some other notes that are in the chord and things like that. Mostly, I think jazz players want to learn it fast, and they'll hear somebody who's got blistering technique. Here's what I'm going to give you one name. If you can remember this, it would be great. Warren Vachey, V-A-C-H with a kind of a funny thing above E, with a funny thing above the E on the end. Warren's a good friend of mine. He just lives like 3 blocks from here. And he's the most amazing melodic jazz player I've ever heard in my life. And he's been doing it, he's 70 something. He's been doing it forever, his whole life. And so my suggestion to you, I've got a stack of his CDs. You have to hear him, and you have to listen to that melody and go, that's how it's supposed to sound. And although you might want to be the world's greatest jazz player, you're not going to be that way because you have astounding technique. You're going to be that way because you are able to create and develop a beautiful melody, a beautiful sound that really speaks to somebody. You know, that's kind of should be all of our concepts. But I think in orchestras, they're not really thinking about that maybe all that much because they have a part to play, right? So you're just trying not to miss any notes. At least that's how it was for me. What you want to do is find a melody that you can expound on and noodle around on and get some recordings to play with. Jamie Ebersold has tons of them, and he's not the only guy. There's tons of jazz records to play along with. But if you don't listen and play with them and all you practice are the scales, no one will ever want to hear you play that jazz. It's not jazz that people will want to listen to. Okay, did I answer all of the questions?
I think so. I think that was great.
Okay, all right.
All right, I don't see any more in the chat, so I'm just going to kind of continue on with my line of thought here. You kind of mentioned briefly about high notes, and I think obviously, Chris, that's one of the things you're so well known for is your great facility to play across the range. So could you always play them, or was it something you had to really work on and develop?
No, I could not play them for the longest time. And I had a messed up embouchure. I haven't shown you my embouchure. I kind of decided I was going to do that. So I can still find that old embouchure. So this was my embouchure when I was first starting and for a few years. That's like the highest note I can get to even now. And back then it was less far than that. I had great technique because I learned how to play in the Salvation Army band. And so there's lots of fast stuff to do, but I had terrible chops, terrible. And finally, I found a teacher. His name is Bob Ceccarini, also one of the finest trumpet players alive. And he's still alive. That's good to know. And amazing technique, wonderful sound, great lead player, great classical player as well. Could do anything. And he said, okay, so here's number 1. You got to stop playing that way. And so I would come into the lesson and I'd start setting up like that. And he'd say, no, you can't play like that in here. And so he made me put it up, straighten it up. Everything I have is not my natural embouchure. And it required me to move my bottom jaw forward. So if this is my top teeth, this is my bottom teeth, I had to push them forward to get them in line like this, okay? Now, some people play with a little bit forward and they play upstream. I think there's some negative things to do with that, although some people manage to do it and sound good. And then this is not necessarily a good idea either. That's pretty easy to figure out because all the pressure is going to go on your top lip. Plus, you've got to vibrate these guys. These two lips in between these sets of teeth have got to vibrate against each other. So, and again, that's a real easy thing. Trust me when I tell you, I thought I was going to invent, no, I don't have to do all of that. There's no way. So I tried to invent some other way to make it work, and it doesn't. I've blazed the trail before you. There's no way to change it other than making your teeth even, all right? So start with top and bottom teeth this way. And then I showed you what I do every day. That scale from low C to double high C and back down, which I do a number of times a day, is all about me making sure my teeth are in the right spot, my muscles are doing the right thing for them to do. And so you literally start putting your teeth in that spot. And the minute you start to pull back, and you will stop yourself because it takes that discipline. We all think it's going to be easy, especially nowadays because everything's on a computer. And if you push that button, your teeth would be perfectly in line if you were doing it on the computer, right? It would be great. Everything would be perfect. It can't happen like that. We have to make this happen. It takes a little bit of muscle. And you know what? It took me about 3 months to change my embouchure that way. Now, then it took me a long time to build more muscle, you know, because your muscle is going to react differently. Sorry, what was this question? Have I come close to answering it at all?
Yeah, I think that was great, Chris. I was just asking you if you could always play high notes and then how you worked on it to develop it.
Absolutely not. I will say this, and I do this on purpose to encourage people. It's easier than you think. It's not. It just isn't that hard. And I know it seems that way because, and I used to feel that way too. The secret is if you do it right, it's not hard. If you watch one of my favorite trumpet players and a guy I've toured with for a long time, and I think he's going to stop touring now, which is too bad. He's 95 years old. So no more tours. But for the last couple of years, I've been going out on the road with Doc and being able every day, because all he wants to talk about is mouthpieces and chops.
Yeah.
And so that experience for me has been great because I got somebody who wants to do it as much as I do. So we would sit and talk and he'd say, well, this and that and all of that stuff. You got to find a time to do it. You got to become a little bit fanatical about it. But once you do, the ease of your playing is going to be fantastic. I used to pace back and forth before a gig thinking, I don't know if I'm going to get that. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if I'm going to be able to play this. I don't do that anymore, right? And it's been a long time since I have because I found the right way to practice on it. And I was encouraged by people who have done it. And again, my embouchure was the worst. Other than people who might be physically deformed, although some people argue that I was, truthfully, you know, I basically needed to get this job done. It's not hard. It just takes a decision to say, okay, I'm gonna learn how to play that way. And trust me when I say it's doable for everybody. Oh, I should give you this little thing too. There's a great book out there about how to make this stuff happen. And I thought I had it here. I do. I'm just going to show you what the book looks like. It's called Special Studies for Trumpet, right? It's written by a friend of mine, John Daniel. And John is one of the smartest guys I know and has studied the trumpet. This is a great book for those of you who are crazy about, well, how does this work? What is that? How do, you know, what happens when you do that? And he's really good at figuring out how to make those exercises are really good. They start off being advanced, but you can start anywhere. I'm sorry, they don't start off being advanced, but they get there. And you'll find that you can develop chops. But the whole key, simple thing is, it all has to start right here. When you set up a perfect platform, just imagine a rocket taking off. Let's just say we're sending a rocket to wherever. And if you know how you go and you see the rocket and it's set up like that. What's going to happen if it's set up like this? It's going to not make it, right? So if you move all this is the basis of every sound that you make. Get that straight. Get your teeth even. That's the rocket pad. All right. Set it up straight, and then you can play from there forever. Okay. Sorry.
No, you're good. I actually had a couple more questions, but it looks like another one has come in. So we'll see if we can. I have got about maybe 5 more questions for you, Chris. So we'll see if we can answer these succinctly. Okay.
I'll try to be shorter. Yeah.
No, you're good. You're good. These are great. What is your experience? Sorry, what is your experience to switch between cornet and trumpet? And do you need to adjust your playing a lot?
I don't adjust my playing at all. You've actually seen me play already. All right. The good news is the fingerings are all the same. It's a different quality sound. I think that it all depends on the mouthpiece you use. This is a Warburton. I forget. I've been using it for so long. I forget what it is. It's a Warburton 4MC. You know, there's a bunch of nice ones out there that are really deep. That would be difficult for me to go to. I bet you play one of those, don't you, Beth? A really deep one.
It's a little deep. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's great if you don't intend to play any double high Cs later on in the program.
I definitely never intend to do that.
You could. I'm sure you could. Anyway, so for me, it's a different style of playing, but it's not a different way of actually playing for me. My lips still do the same thing they do. The muscles still do the same thing they do. I don't raise my tone so much. I'm not looking for a bright sound. I'm looking for that nice, beautiful, melodic, melody-like cornet, warm sound. I think that's the best way to describe what cornet's supposed to sound like. And good news is the fingerings are the same, so it doesn't bother me to go back and forth between them all the time. In brass band of Battle Creek, actually, you guys don't even know what that is. So Beth and I play in a band together, brass band of Battle Creek, and it's players from all over the world that are brass band players. And so we play trumpets and cornets in the cornet section. And we play trumpets when we want, or when we want that sound, or when it's needed, and cornets when we do it. And the switch off is not that difficult once you get used to it.
Great. Okay, so what is the typical musician life before COVID? Do you do a lot of traveling?
I've been on the road actually for the last 5 years with Paul Anka. And most of you guys don't know who he is. He's an old singer. He's the guy who wrote My Way for Frank Sinatra, who's somebody else you probably don't know. But this guy, he also wrote Michael Jackson's tune, This Is It. He's the guy who wrote that song. So he writes a lot of songs, and he's been touring for all of that time with a big band. So I've been doing that. It's not nonstop, so I still work and teach here in New York. I play other gigs. I think I've made all of my brass band gigs that I have to, and still have been out on the road doing that. Now I think he's going to stop being on the road as a result of this. He's getting a little up there in age. I think that unfortunately I'm actually scheduled to do a new Broadway show, or not a new show, but a show supposed to open on Broadway. And that was supposed to happen a year ago. And of course it's still going to open, but nobody knows when it's all going to start, because they can't really find a time where it's safe to start. The weird thing is, we're even at Juilliard, we're teaching via Zoom like this. So it's been since last February or March, whenever this all started, that I've actually been in the building at this point. So it's been shut down since then. So I'm still seeing my students, but it's had a really bad impact. When it's going to all start up again, I don't know. I know they're desperate to start up. Let me tell you that the Broadway shows and musical events, the Metropolitan Opera is not doing performances, the symphony orchestras, and it's hurt a lot of players. The good news is most of them have insurance money and pension money and stuff like that they can take. And the good news in the music business, you can take your pension money and still keep working. You have to stop working for a month, and then you're getting your pension and you're working the gigs. So many people are just living on their pensions and waiting for all the places to open up.
Yeah, it's an absolutely crazy time. I know we're all
It's
itching for
pretty
things
horrible.
to open back up. Okay, there's another question. This kind of goes back to our high notes again. I think what they're driving at here is, how do you keep from getting tired, and how do you protect yourself physically?
Yeah, build some muscle. In fact, I brought, I keep a bunch of pencils like this. I buy them, like 30 or 40 at a time. So these pencils all have nice, clean erasers. Now, there's something out there called a Pete, and I'm sure that, Beth, you probably know what that is. I'm not sure everybody else will. Let me just say this pencil works just as well, although the only reason I'm not using my Pete is because I got like 9 of them lost here in my studio. I don't know where they are. They're so tiny, I keep losing them. Anyway, so a great way to build a muscle without practicing a note is to stick this in front of your teeth. Don't close your teeth. Hold it with your lips and hold it straight out like this. It creates a perfect embouchure muscle-wise, right? Keep your teeth straight. You're going to get tired, and the pencil's going to start to, kind of start to fall down. Push it back up there and hang on forward to it as long as you can. Get those muscles tired, like you see those people at the gym when they're going for that last, they're shaking, trying to get that last bit of weight up, right? That's what we want to do, because these are just muscles. It's a physiological certainty. If you build them, if you work at them, they will get stronger. And that does translate right over to your cornet or your trumpet, whatever you're playing, or any other instrument for that matter. So I do that. I walk around with pencils in my lips. Most all my students do. Unfortunately, be careful not to run into things. And I also highly recommend the P period, E period, T period, E period. That stands for something. Do you happen to know what that is? Yeah,
no idea.
I don't know. But if you look up, go to a music store online, get it online. They make it in plastic and metal. If you're just starting, I would say plastic is a good thing to go. After that, I would say go with the metal. But you're going to get tired on both if you do it long enough. And by the way, you can do anything with it. It only sticks out that far. You can wash the dishes. You can mow the grass. You can chop down a tree. You can do whatever you want to do, except play the trumpet, since that's in your mouth, right? And it's a great thing to drive to work on. Those of you that, if there's anybody here driving and you have a commute, stick that thing, just drive like that. You know who used to do that? Susan Slaughter. Yeah. She always was working on getting her jaw. So she would drive everywhere with her jaw out like that. Really? I'm sure other drivers would look at her like, what's the matter with you? You know what? Are you mad at me? Anyway, it's a great shortcut to building muscle. And then, of course, you translate it over into playing the trumpet, and it gets much easier. Great.
So, Chris, I know you're kind of a gearhead, and you're kind of giving yourself away here with some of your answers. I notice all your mutes behind you as well. How would you suggest somebody who's first kind of starting out and really just trying to figure out how to move past, whatever came with that first horn? They're looking for a mouthpiece, they're looking for a horn. What do you do, and how do you figure out what equipment's going to work best for you?
Okay, I think that's one of the hardest questions there possibly could be. And I'll tell you why. A lot of people will say, use a large mouthpiece, because you'll build more muscle that way. And especially if you're getting directions from an orchestral player, you're going to get suggestions for the same mouthpiece they use, which is usually a fairly large one. And there's nothing wrong with that for what they're playing. But I would say that one of the most important things you can do, and by the way, I should show you, I don't know if you can see them all. Here's my can you see those mouthpieces over there?
Yes, we can. They were to the left.
There's some more over there. There's some more over there. And then there's a basket full of them as well, okay? So let me just tell you this. It's real easy to find the wrong mouthpiece. There's at least 300 mouthpieces in this room, and they were all the wrong one, okay? I play on 3 different mouthpieces. One's a flugelhorn mouthpiece, one's a classical-based mouthpiece, and one's my lead trumpet mouthpiece. And the classical-based one is the one I use on cornet as well. So finding the right equipment I feel you should start on a smaller, narrower diameter. And I kind of like a cushion diameter. And I believe I started on a 10.5C, which is small like this. And it's a cushioned rim, okay? Now, I'm not saying that has to be the one. I think your teacher needs to say, okay, let me look at your chops. What does that look like? Where are you as a player? What are your weaknesses? I think you should practice on this thing, okay? And I think that's very important to consult your teacher who knows you're playing, since I feel like I'm getting to know you all, not because I can't see any of you. So there's no way for me to tell you what mouthpiece you should play. I can tell you what type. I would like it, if you're a beginner, for it to be cushioned. And then things will progress pretty quickly that way without a mouthpiece that's too large or too sharp for you. And then as you develop, just like anything else, if you started lifting weights and you started lifting 20 pounds, then you would lift, okay, I'm ready, I'm moving on. You know, you're going to move on to heavier weights and you'll get better faster.
Thanks, Chris. We're about out of time here. I'm going to end with one final question, and that I know you've done a really great job, even though certainly you're one of the busiest musicians out there, and you have been throughout your career, but you've always found time and the importance of staying connected with the core and continuing within your music ministry. And I just was hoping you could talk about the reason why you did that and why you felt that that was important to do.
Yeah, well, first of all, if I had to give up one or the other, I wouldn't give up my church experience. So I do think it's possible to be a Christian or a church player in any, doesn't have to be the Salvation Army. It can be wherever you normally go to church. And I'm not trying to preach to anybody a certain kind of church. What was great about the Salvation Army is that they had a band, and they taught me how to play a cornet. And most importantly, they helped me understand that it wasn't just a musical experience, it was a spiritual experience. And it takes a little while when you're young to really start to understand what that means. Now, I'll tell you this, for me, playing the trumpet and cornet is always a spiritual experience, but it's different when you're playing in church, at church, with my grandkids in the place, with people that I love and love to worship with. So I can't imagine ever giving that up for any reason. Now, it's possible that maybe you can't be in the band. I know some people get too old to be in the band. To be honest with you, now nobody's playing in bands because of the COVID thing, but at the end there, I wasn't playing because I'd been on the road a bit, and also because our band is full of cornet players. We have way more cornet players than we need. So I would sub. I would come to rehearsals, when I was in town and cover if they were low on cornets. I'd sub on Sunday mornings. Every Sunday morning I walked in with my cornet, walked into the band room. I talked to our band director, Charlie, and say, what do you need me on? And he'd say, we're going to play flugelhorn today. Here's a flugelhorn. Or you're going to play second cornet, which again is I'm kind of liking that a lot, moving around. I think eventually I'd love to play soprano. We have Ron Wakes Norris on soprano, and he does a good job. I think I could do better, but I hope he's not watching. No, I'm just kidding. If he were to ever decide to stop, I would say, hey, listen, I'd love to play this chair. And but I will say this, being in the band is not what it's like being in the Salvation Army, but it is a way to worship. It's not the only way to worship. There are plenty of people in the pews who are worshiping like most people worship, but it is a deeply spiritual experience for me, no matter what I'm playing. And I can't imagine any circumstances under which that would never be the case. I really believe that the teachers I had, the opportunities I had, the jobs, by the way, I've been employed my whole life, one gig right after the other one, just like that. Was that me? I don't think so. I think that it's God ordained in a lot of ways for me. I don't know anybody else who's had the same kind of experiences that I have. And I got to say, it's the difference is not because I'm better than the next guy. You only have to be so good to play a show or a recording session. Some of the recording sessions are the simplest things you'd ever want to play. It's because this is what God thought was good for me. And the great part of it is although I was completely unprepared for it, with my funky chops and teeth and all of that stuff, it turned out being great for me. And it's what I love to do. I'll never stop. The day before they put me in the box, I will have played the cornet or the trumpet. So it is a great way to worship because you have an offering to make. There's nothing like, if you show up and you don't have any money to pay the collection plates coming down the aisle, and I forgot my money, or you're faking it. I don't know. Anyways, coming down and you got to just pass it on. I go to church and I have an offering that I can make, and it means a lot to me. It always has. So hopefully I'll still be able to do that for a little while. We'll see how that goes.
Well, we hope so too. Listen, Chris, I want to say thank you so much for your time and sharing your talents and expertise with us today.
Thank you, Beth. You're doing a great job.
Oh, thanks.
I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you so much, Chris. We really appreciate it. So
okay.
Happy practicing.
Thank you. I'm on it. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.